Hello, everybody. I am back again. It's Thursday. It's 4:40 in the afternoon. We actually have live just coming to the podium, dude. Just looking at the background, all the stuff that has been seized is insane. So we got Kristi Noem giving an update. Also, Walz, Tim Walz has done two press conferences, and Trump did one also. Tom Homan did also too. So we have a handful of stuff today, a lot regarding ICE. I'm going to go ahead and go right to the live stream now, and then I'll get back with you guys when it's over. All right.
Everybody? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And I also want to thank Chief Banks for being here with me today. He's the chief of the border and has given us excellent leadership in making sure that we're making America safe again and that we're upholding our laws in this great country. I also have with me Diane, who's the director, and want to thank her for her leadership. Sydney's over here as well, has been imperative in making sure this port of entry is run safely and that we are interdicting drugs like you see in front of you here today and getting them off of our streets so that they don't poison our next generation of Americans. We do have Sheriff Ken Jones is here with us today. I want to thank him for his partnership. A key to our success at the Department of Homeland Security is making sure that we're partnering with our local law enforcement and doing our operations together to make sure that we're keeping our communities safe. We have Port Director Rosa Hernandez, who's with us. She's the leader here at Otemesa and Tecate Ports of Entry. And I want to give a warm welcome and a thanks to all of our law enforcement that are here today. Just their willingness to take an oath to secure our country, to uphold the law and make sure that it's applied fairly is an incredible, powerful testimony to their kids of this next generation that will step up and serve in their footsteps. Your leadership and the hard work of these law enforcement officers have helped President Trump deliver the most secure border in American history. And they're helping us win the fight against fentanyl and saving countless lives. In fact, we were just here touring the vault that is so important to making sure that we're interdicting these drugs and keeping them off of our streets and getting them away from cartels and dangerous criminals to make sure that we're destroying them before they destroy lives. But also right here in front of you, just in this bin in front of you, you see enough lethal doses of fentanyl that would kill 10 million Americans if it were to be allowed to come into our country, be trafficked, and poison our people. For 4 dark years under Joe Biden, we saw violent criminals, murderers, gang members, terrorists, rapists, pedophiles, and human smugglers invade this country. Drug traffickers brought dangerous narcotics into our country and poisoned our people and tore our communities apart. But the American people put President Trump back into office. They removed criminal, illegal aliens from our communities. They've stopped the cartels, and they've stopped the flow of these dangerous drugs. And what the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security have done is a testimony to President Trump's leadership and to these law enforcement officers' dedication. For 9 straight months, U.S. Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the United States. With fewer people that cross illegally, we make sure that our southern border apprehensions were much lower than during the Biden administration. In fact, 93% lower than during that administration. President Trump has cut off the flow of trafficking down at the southern border, and just of fentanyl, we've seen a decrease of 56% drop in fentanyl coming into this country. The vault that we've toured today holds 188,218 pounds of seized illicit drugs. That inventory includes over 100,000 pounds of meth, 59,000 pounds of cocaine, and 7,400 pounds of fentanyl. In other words, that vault holds more than 1.7 billion lethal doses of narcotics, of fentanyl and cocaine. All of these narcotics were interdicted by U.S. Customs and Border Protection in the San Diego area. That's 1.7 billion lives that are saved because of the work that they do. The vast majority of these drug seizures happen at the port of entry, and the majority of drug seizures along the southern border happen at this port of entry. Those drug seizures are incredible to what they do to save American lives. Now, the men and women here at Otay Mesa are heroes who work around the clock to make sure that they're keeping Americans safe. Fentanyl has killed countless Americans who still should be here with us today. In fact, I've met with many parents who've lost children to fentanyl poisoning. Americans like Greg Swan, who the first time I met him told me about his son, Drew, who died from fentanyl poisoning at the age of 24 in 2013. In fact, Greg is one of the co-founders of Fentanyl Fathers, fathers who've lost their children because of that dangerous drug that was running everywhere and running rampant throughout our country. Also, I met Rebecca Kisling, who lost both of her sons. She lost her 20-year-old son, Caleb, and 18-year-old Kyler to fentanyl poisoning on the same day in 2020. There's far too many stories of that happening. In fact, 1 in 3 Americans know someone that has died from fentanyl poisoning. That shouldn't happen in the greatest country on earth. And President Trump gets up every single day to make sure that it doesn't happen. Thanks to him and to the men and women of CBP, we're winning the fight against fentanyl. Now, President Trump has called the cartels the ISIS of the Western Hemisphere, and he's right. The cartels traffic, they torture, they behead human beings, and they enrich themselves and profit off of American deaths. And that's why President Trump took action and designated them as foreign terrorist organizations on day one. Today, the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security are on the front lines of the fight against the cartels and the drugs poisoning our country. And we are winning. And while we stop threats from coming into our country, we can't forget about the ones that are already in our borders. Right now, in prisons and jails across California, ICE has lodged detainers on over 33,000 criminal illegal aliens. Instead of honoring these detainers against criminals who trafficked drugs and committed crimes across the American people, Governor Newsom and California's sanctuary policies have released over 4,500 criminal illegal aliens back onto the streets to create more victims that will harm more Americans. We need him to work with us and these local law enforcement and community leaders and elected officials here in California to protect Americans, to make sure that we're interdicting more of these drugs before they poison more Americans. And we need them to work with us to help make sure that we're keeping our law enforcement safe. Our ICE officers and CBP officers are facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them, a 3,200% increase in vehicular attacks against them, and an 8,000% increase in death threats against them. On January 23rd, an illegal alien here at the San Diego Sector Border Patrol attacked a law enforcement officer, hit him in the head with a rock, left him lacerated, bruised, and bleeding. He was hospitalized, but his assailant did escape. That attack was the 7th recorded assault on a Border Patrol agent in San Diego since October. Law enforcement officers take an oath. They pledge to protect citizens, and they work hard to uphold to the truths that our founders created this country on. In the Declaration of Independence, our founders pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to keep people safe so that fellow Americans and our children could live in freedom, that they could live in safety. And that's the same pledge that our law enforcement officers take each and every day. They deserve our gratitude. They deserve our thanks because their job never ends, and they keep working every single day to make sure that Americans are safe, that they're protected from criminals that would not just traffic them and their children, but also traffic these drugs in to kill our next generation. I want to thank you all for being here, and I have all the confidence in the world of the law enforcement standing here today to continue to do their work, to protect Americans. And with that, I want to introduce Chief Banks to come up and share a few words with you as well. Chief?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. As the Secretary said, my name is Michael Banks, and I'm the Chief of the United States Border Patrol. I want to highlight something that the Secretary just shared with you. Enough fentanyl in front of me to kill 19 million Americans. That's in one location across the entire southwest border. As you go across the southwest border, you continue to see these type of seizures. And I'll talk about why we're seeing these type of seizures. Under the Biden administration, every Border Patrol agent was forced off the line, left the border wide open, and we're doing mass processing of illegal immigrants into the cities and into this country. When President Trump came back in on day one, catch and release ended. The United States Border Patrol has not released a single illegal alien in 9 months, and that's a record we're very proud of, and we're going to continue pushing forward. But under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, we've been able to get the most secure border we've ever had in this country, and we're not done. We're going to keep pushing until it's 100% secure. But what does that mean for these drugs that you see sitting in front of us? What that means is the thousands of OFO officers that were pulled away from port of entries and sent out to the border to help Border Patrol agents process millions of illegal aliens are now returned to their port of entries, where they can do more inspections, they can look for more narcotics, they can operate the equipment and technology that this administration has given them, and that's why you're seeing this massive increase. What you should be concerned about is how much narcotics got through in 4 years when we had little to no OFO officers down here able to do their job because they were forced to come out and process millions of illegal aliens and release them into the country alongside the Border Patrol. I'm going to pass it off to Diane Sabatino, the Executive Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Thank you.
Good afternoon, really, and thank you, Secretary Noem, for being here with us today, and Chief Banks also for your great partnership in CBP. We're really grateful for the opportunity to highlight the work of our frontline personnel, the work that interdicting these narcotics every day to secure our borders and protect our communities. What you just heard from Secretary Noem reflects our mission to secure the border at ports of entry, frontline personnel applying their training, the intelligence, and technology to keep dangerous narcotics out of our communities. It's demanding work. The men and women who carry out this mission do so with professionalism, often under incredibly challenging conditions. It's never boring here in Otay Mesa, and their commitment makes a real difference to the outcomes that you see right in front of you today. And as the Secretary mentioned, our success reflects joint enforcement across CBP and aligns with the administration's priorities. Strong enforcement to ensure border security and support for the people who are the backbone of the mission that we're responsible for. And the Office of Field Operations continues to work on key initiatives, including obtaining advanced information for shipments and travelers, modernizing processing systems, and investing in technology that allows us to operate effectively. All of these efforts really support our most valuable resource, which is our frontline personnel. That includes our CBP officers, our Border Patrol agents, our import specialists, and our agriculture specialists. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act represents a generational investment in our border security mission. Funding from the Act is going to allow CBP to expand capabilities such as non-intrusive inspection technology and responsibly integrate artificial intelligence, machine learning into the work that we do. And more importantly, the Office of Field Operations is going to be able to hire more than 5,000 CBP officers to bring here to the ports of entry again, to identify more narcotics, interdict, and to disrupt the cartels. Our border security mission is national security, and our efforts are never going to stop. And we're proud to be here supporting this critical work. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Chief Banks, as well. With that, we'll open it up to any questions that you may have. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, what I would say is that we are extremely grateful for the partnership that we have with local law enforcement partners like the sheriff over here. He has been a fantastic partner with us in getting these drugs interdicted before they get onto our streets and kill Americans, and not just Californians. They would be trafficked all over the country. What I would say is I hope that Governor Newsom will partner with us more, that he would work with us to honor our detainers. You heard me earlier in my statement say that there's 33,000 people that are in California jails that have committed crimes against the American people. Before they are released back out onto our streets, give them to us so that if they're criminal, illegal aliens, we can return them back to their home countries so that there aren't any more victims in this country. We shouldn't be letting people stay in this country to commit more crimes when they haven't come here the right way. So many Americans fought to come here from other countries the right way and become citizens and believe in the freedoms and the liberties we stand for. I would invite Governor Newsom to partner with us to make sure that those criminals are removed and that we continue to keep our streets safe. Well, they're obviously expressing their First Amendment rights, and we welcome that. As long as they do so peacefully, I think it's a wonderful thing. Yes. Well, listen, I'll never give you details or give you an explanation on law enforcement activities. I don't want to put our law enforcement officers at risk by exposing some of the planned operations that they may or may not have. But what we are focused on, and I'll tell you, as far as the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and CBP, is targeted operations, going after specific individuals that are a threat to public safety, individuals that have committed crimes either here or in another country that are dangerous to stay out on our streets. We don't want more victims in this country. We want to make sure that those criminals are removed from our streets and that we're returning them back home to their home countries when they're brought to justice. So beyond that, those targeted operations, we won't talk about the details of. Yes. Are you talking about the economic impact? You know, what I would say is we welcome the opportunity to partner with community leaders. If they feel that in their city or in their community, that the individuals who live there, the citizens, could be better served by a partnership with us, we would love that. We would love to work with them to make sure that public safety is a #1 priority, that people feel safe in their communities, they can go to their jobs, they can go to school, and know that the laws will be upheld, they'll be respected, and that we'll work together to keep them safe. Yes. Yeah. I think you're asking about detention facilities and the standards in it. Federal standards at our detention facilities are the highest that there are in this country. In fact, we have a higher level of status than many states or local communities have at their jails or detention centers. So we're proud of the fact that every single individual, when they come, that they're well taken care of, they receive food and medical care, and then we return them as quickly as they can back to their home countries if they are being held. The one thing I would point out is that every single individual that's in that detention facility is given the opportunity to go home to their home country. If they decide that day that they want to go home, we'll give them $2,600 and a plane ticket and take them back home. So it's their choice on if they want to stay there or not. Are you talking about our funding bill? We're concerned about the Department of Homeland Security not being funded. In fact, I think it's the wrong message to send to the world at this point in time. When you think about it, every other portion of the federal government has been funded except Homeland Security. That's telling the rest of the world the Democrat Party doesn't think that protecting America is safe. It's the wrong message to send. They keep talking about the fact that they want ICE's operations to be impacted, but only 11% of that bill is ICE. The rest of it is FEMA, which is responsible for disaster response, for protecting our critical infrastructure. If we had some kind of an attack or a terrible disaster that hit our country, FEMA is the agency that's responsible for running our government, for stabilizing our country. And the Democrat Party is choosing not to fund FEMA and put us in jeopardy in that situation. The other things that wouldn't be funded is TSA. The security at all of our airports is in jeopardy because they've refused to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The TSA, those officers that show up and check your bags, they screen individuals on if they're safe to get on airplanes or not, they won't be paid. After Friday, they won't be paid and won't receive their paychecks. And I hear people talk about the fact, well, they're exempt employees, they're expected to still show up. How long would you continue to show up for a job that you're not being paid for? In fact, these TSA employees just went through a 43-day shutdown where they weren't paid. How often do you expect these good patriots to keep showing up and to do their job knowing that their salaries won't be taken care of and their families' bills won't be taken care of? We fund the Secret Service. The Secret Service has responsibility to protect the most powerful people in the world. We also fund the Coast Guard. When you talk about the Coast Guard right now is keeping rivers open on the East Coast so that critical food and energy sources can get to our largest cities. The Coast Guard is out there breaking ice on the Hudson River, the New York Harbor, the East River, and keeping that the rivers open so that we can get fuel and propane and fuel and food to New York and to Boston and to cities that rely on that. What you're saying by not funding the Coast Guard is that the Democrat Party doesn't think it's important that people eat or that they stay warm or that our national security is protected. So this is a dangerous situation that we're in, that the Democrat Party has chosen to shut down the department that was created after 9/11. This department was created recognizing that we are vulnerable to terrorist attacks and that American homeland needs to be funded and focused on keeping us safe within our own borders. We have all responsibility for cyber operations and funding and going after terrorists who would attack our critical infrastructure, our electrical grid, our water systems, that would come in and hack into our intelligence agencies and our national security operations. The Department of Homeland Security has the agency that's responsible for stopping those threats and going after those bad actors. The Democrat Party is choosing not to fund them and making us very vulnerable to those terrorists being successful here on our homeland. I hope that they will come to their senses, recognize that the American people need to come first, and have a policy discussion that we should be having on a policy bill in regards to any reforms that they want to see. Last question. I heard you ask about Operation Metro Surge and CBP and ICE, and what was the 287G? Now we're still working on 287G agreements that would happen with local law enforcement, sheriff, city police. We would love to have that kind of an agreement with the Minneapolis Police Department or with sheriffs in Minnesota. I know that some of the operations in Minnesota are changing, but we're going to continue to stay focused with our investigators through the Homeland Security investigations on the fraud that's been going on making sure that those individuals there are working to get to the bottom of the billions of taxpayer dollars that were stolen and funneled out of this country for nefarious reasons. So, we're grateful that we've found some agreement on what we can do to try to work together. We're looking to formalize those to make sure that we can bring peace and safety to the Twin Cities. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
I think for our folks who have video on this, pretty graphic representation of what the federal surge has done to Minnesota. One aspect of it, we know the things you see on TV. We understand about with Alex and Renee's killing, with the other shootings, with all the things that are happening. We've covered, and I'm grateful to all of you, covered extensively the disruptions to our schools, to our hospitals. I think one that's on here, and we were just saying some of the heart and soul of our communities is our food and hospitality and restaurant industry. You're going to hear from Patty, Saeed, you'll hear from Commissioner Verlick, from Deed, what the impact of it is. Well, the impact is pretty clear right here. This place should be hopping. This place should be full. We should have the 4 employees that would be working this kitchen be working here. They're not, which the trickle-down effect of that is, how do they make rent? How do they pay for food? How do they do the things they need to do? And so I think it's been clear over the last nearly 3 months now that we are long past this being anything about immigration. Again, I'm grateful for the great reporting that's been done. Of all the people that have been detained by ICE, 14% fall into that worst of the worst. Those are the people that we know about. We're seeing continuous stories about the conditions at the Whipple building and others, the horrific stories of Liam and the number of children that have spiked up that are in detention, all in the name of making our communities safer, none of which is true. We're here today to highlight the economic impact, and this is going to take some time as it shakes out, and it will be an ongoing rolling hit that is happening to these businesses. And Saeed just mentioning, we just want to get back to do what we do best, normal, cook food for our neighbors, make some money, and go on about our lives. The incredible disruption that has been caused by
If you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. And President Trump responded, says Fox News polls can't be trusted. So now Newsmax is conducting its own poll on President Trump's
what can only be described as a federal retribution campaign. And I say that because I'm not searching for words. That's exactly what the President of the United States called it, a retribution campaign against Minnesota. And we've seen it against our neighbors. We've seen the terror in the streets. We've seen the violence in our streets. We're seeing the economic destruction of this. And then we're seeing day in and day out the impact across state government. At the very time we're putting people at risk, we're making it more difficult for people to get health care. We're making it more difficult to have safety in where they take their children for child care. So we're continuing to make the case that that Minnesota has stood up for their neighbors, that Minnesota has asked that this surge of folks leave. I spoke with Tom Homan yesterday. I spoke with Susie Walz, the President Chief of Staff, this morning. We're very much in a trust but verify mode, but it's my expectation, and we will hear more from them, I think, in the next day or so, that we are talking days, not weeks and months of this occupation. And it's an expectation that we will continue to get cooperation on joint investigations of the crimes that were committed or potentially committed against Minnesotans, and then a backing off of the unprecedented. What happened when they said this retribution campaign, the very unqualified cabinet secretaries all took that as free rein to come to Minnesota and bring retribution to us. So if you were the Department of Transportation, you did it. If you were the Ag Department, you did it. If you were DHS, you did it. If you're Dr. Oz, you did it. If you're O'Neill, you did it. All of them came to get in the news, and all of them came in all aspects of whether it was holding money, whether it was trying to file charges against people, or things that might not seem like they would be that impactful. Data request, millions and millions of pages of data requests, which is fine by me. We do it in Minnesota, but they don't even have any people working at these agencies. So they request the data and they don't go anywhere. The people who are the attorneys that should actually be prosecuting on ICE cases, the lead prosecutor quit yesterday. Fraud is a long forgotten thing for everybody except me and people in Minnesota who know we need to prosecute it and do what's right. The federal government lost all their prosecutors. The federal government sent us no one who's an expert in fraud prevention or fraud discovery or fraud prosecution. They sent untrained people on the streets to push people down or to try and follow teachers home. Those things are not making anybody better. It's certainly not making America great again. And here in Minnesota, we're here today to make the case that this needs to end. But more importantly, Minnesota is going to do what we've seen our neighbors do on the streets. Stand up for each other, try and make things better for each other. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Verlick here to talk a little bit about this, but I would preview for all of you as we get ready to move into the legislative session. We're working with our partners. We're listening to people like Patty who are telling us this is what we need. And I think here later this week, or we'll try and get something out, put a package of relief together, especially focused around businesses. Very much we had to do this during COVID. COVID was something that we couldn't control. This is an entirely man-made and avoidable catastrophe that's fell on these businesses. But I think it's still important for us to put something together to make sure that they get back on their feet. These are resilient folks. These are entrepreneurs. They know how to make things work. But what has been brought upon them without a little bit of help is going to be very difficult. And the sad part about this is if, again, totally avoidable, totally should not have happened and had nothing to do with immigration, ends up putting businesses out of work or out of business, that is totally unacceptable. So we're going to continue to push on this. We're continuing to gather the data. Grateful for the partners in the trade groups, the hospitality groups, and all of those that are helping us put that together. And then turning it to DEED, which was highly successful, highly targeted during COVID, about some of that relief. So I'll turn it over to DEED Commissioner Verlick.
Thanks so much, Governor. Thanks, everybody, for gathering today. Thank you, First Lady, Senator Clark, as well, for being here, along with the other speakers you will hear from in a moment. We're here at Malcolm Yards, which is such a happy place. Normally, it's obviously a beautiful space, and DEED takes special pride in this one because we have worked with Patty and her husband with grant funding over time as well to help develop this so that it can be the wonderful gathering place that it is. I think it's literally that table or that one where we've, Governor, don't tell anybody, but had Commissioner Happy Hour in this location. So I speak from experience in saying how wonderful are the offerings that are here. But we are here on this occasion for a much less happy reason, and that is to, again, highlight the impact of the federal actions and what it's doing to our hospitality industry, to the restaurant industry, but really retail and far beyond that. I've talked before about the fact that it's even having ripple effects on manufacturing and supply chains as well. It was a few weeks ago that we gathered at a restaurant in St. Paul to highlight some of these impacts, and then also the governor had made the declaration of Shop Local for the month of February as part of our Shop Local Stand Together effort. So in the intervening time, we have had lots of other local areas that have announced similar activities. We have had funds popping up to try to help businesses. So I would say all of that has been very worthwhile, has been very impactful, but also insufficient, because we continue to hear as well in the intervening time from so many business owners about the fact that the scale of the harm being inflicted by our own federal government is well beyond what they can handle. And so Patty, who owns this place, is one of the owners that we heard from, again, underscoring the fear on the part of employees who would otherwise be here helping to make this place operate, fear on the part of customers, and fear generally. So it is great news, of course, that the posture seems to have changed at the federal level towards their activities here in Minnesota. But as the governor said, it's a trust but verify situation. And frankly, the fear that has been sown, I haven't really noticed any reduction in that. And so the harms, the economic impact that we're seeing are as strong as ever. You're starting to see some estimates of how much that is. The city of Minneapolis put out an estimate of, I think, $100 million in lost revenue since this began. DEED, our agency, works with the federal government, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, to put out numbers on unemployment, et cetera. Those, of course, have been delayed for a variety of reasons at the federal level. And it takes time for these impacts to filter into our numbers. We fully anticipate seeing them there, though, as well, because it's disheartening in that Minnesota has been outperforming on job growth on a year-over-year basis relative to the national average. But in this case, unfortunately, we have our own federal government who is impeding that progress. So we want to thank everyone who has generously opened their pocketbooks and helped to support businesses during this time of survival. We want to encourage everyone to continue doing that and to hear just how urgent it is. I'll pass it over to Patty now to talk about what it looks like from her perspective. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Patty Wall, and I own the market at Malcolm Yards in the Prospect Park neighborhood of Minneapolis. For the past 4.5 years, our hall has housed 9 chef-owned and operated kitchens representing a multicultural blend of cuisines from around the world. I'm proud to support these entrepreneurs as they develop their culinary talents, create jobs, and grow their brands. My business is only one example of the opportunities the hospitality sector provides for individuals and communities across Minnesota. Today, I'm here because that sector has become collateral damage during the current federal surge of enforcement activity, and the contributions we make to our neighborhoods are at serious risk. We were told the surge of federal agents was intended to make Minnesota safer. From the perspective of many restaurant operators, the result has instead been a climate of fear reminiscent of the early months of COVID, when people were afraid to leave their homes and normal community activities slowed dramatically. That same dynamic is now affecting restaurants, food halls, hotels, and event venues. Since the start of Operation Metro Surge, many restaurants have experienced sales declines of 50 to 80%. Staffing has been severely disrupted, either because legal workers are afraid to travel to work for fear of being falsely detained, or because reduced customer traffic has forced businesses to cut hours. Private events have been canceled or postponed, and many establishments have shortened operating hours simply to manage the drop in demand, per what you see today. Hospitality businesses operate on extremely narrow margins. a prolonged loss of this scale is not sustainable. Many operators are already struggling to meet rent and payroll obligations, and some are only a few payroll cycles away from layoffs or permanent closure. Some have already closed. If conditions do not change soon, many Minnesotans may find the neighborhood restaurants and gathering places they rely on are simply gone. Our industry is not asking for handouts. What we need most immediately is the restoration of normal life conditions so economic recovery can begin. Yep. A significant reduction in the federal operation or its conclusion would allow businesses, workers, and customers to return to normal routines and help stabilize an industry that supports thousands of loyal, hardworking Minnesotans. The sooner this disruption ends, the sooner we can return to doing what we do best, creating jobs, welcoming guests, and serving our communities in this great state of Minnesota. Thank you.
The deals are on at Best Buy.
This is what happened when you're the last to speak. They mentioned all the points I want to talk about. So, honestly, as a small business owner, I wanted to give you a little bit of information about the restaurant industry. I don't know if you know, but the restaurant industry in Minnesota hosts up to 230,000 employees. We make sales about $24 billion. And our payroll is almost $7 billion. And the independent restaurants in the city is 75% of the total restaurants over here. So independent restaurants are struggling right now. And we are the big portion of the restaurant that exists in Minnesota, right? We are the infrastructure of our neighborhood. We are the livelihood of our neighborhood. And right now, honestly, we are struggling. The unfortunate part, people see us open, but they don't see how are we operating. I have an ask, of course, for the state. An immediate one or the urgent one is cash. We are almost out of cash. A lot of small businesses are out of cash. And to try to go and get grants or loan at this point, it's a long process. I would ask Governor if you have if you can help with at least the sales tax relief, postpone it, right? We don't have, it's in 10 days. A lot of restaurants, I don't think are able to pay the sales tax. And if they have to pay the sales tax, they might not be able to pay the rent or utilities. And so that's an immediate ask we are hoping that you can do. And the good news is, like Governor said, even if it's a matter of days for them to leave, to us, it's a matter of months to recover from it. It's going to take us a long time, month, maybe 3 to 6 months for small businesses to get back on our feet and learn how to walk again, let alone run. Right? We definitely need emergency stabilization grant. Try to help people pay their rent. My labor is 40% right now. This is no business in the United States of America can operate their business at 40%. It means we are below 5% or below zero in profit margins. So we need emergency stabilization. We need licensing relief, like what happened during COVID. The city of Minneapolis allowed us to postpone or even relief on taxes and paying the business licensing. It's a small ask, but too many small asks will add up to be a big thing. Short term, we really would like to see some property tax relief for the businesses that were affected, so landlords can pass some of those tax relief into rent concession for businesses so they can sustain being in business. Long term, I hope that we can sit down and talk honestly about tip credit for restaurants. This will make the big difference for us long term. I'm not talking about just 3 and 6 months. I'm talking about years to come in. We really need to sit down on the table and talk about the tip credit. We need to sit down and talk about the price transparency that came in 2025. And at the end, I really wanted to just get my thoughts out that we really need to support thousands of restaurants, supporting our employee who we pay payroll to them, we pay property tax, we pay sales tax. We support the small businesses that support us, support the community. I don't know if you guys know, but restaurant business, we make less than 10% profit margin. And independent restaurants spend most of that money in Minnesota. We're not the business in Chicago or New York, the corporate outside of the States. We are in this town, we operate in this town, and we spend our money in this town. So the help that the state and the city will do to us will make sure that we continue, exist, and prosper. Thank you.
Hi, Doran Clark, I'm the state senator here. And just to amplify really what Saeed's saying is, there's a short-term cash need. And I have a restaurant this is my district, and there's a restaurant in my district, Maya Cuisine, who's been shut down in this time of onslaught. And just yesterday they said, we need cash. And so they've asked everyone to, well, go buy some gift cards from them. So when this ends, that you can go and shop, and this gets them over the hump. A neighbor of mine runs a landscaping company, and he shared that as he started to talk to his workers in December, they said, we're all legal. We can't come back and work for you this year. We are too scared. He has shut down his landscaping business. An old neighbor of mine shared, I came to this country 53 years ago from a third world country. I've never been more scared to be in anywhere in the world. That's what these workers are dealing with. That's what these leaders are dealing with. And it's an intentional choice by the president who said this is retribution. And so I ask that we make sure that we fill this hall back up, and that we make sure that Maya Cuisine buy those gift cards so they can get over the hump, like Saeed has mentioned. So we're with you, and thank you so much for really putting a clear image on what this occupation looks like.
Thanks, Senator. Appreciate it. Well, you heard it, and we'll be able to take some questions. I would just say to all of you and to the Minnesotans who are listening that it's a false choice here to say this is the price that you have to pay to do immigration enforcement. This is the price you pay when you do immigration enforcement the exact wrong way, where it's not targeted, it's not humane, it's not focusing on what the purpose of it is. And to call this collateral damage is, I think, even an understatement. It is, you hear this, it is catastrophic, again, for very suspicious or suspect results that came out of this. Very difficult to get numbers, very difficult to say what they accomplished doing this, when you could accomplish the idea of making sure we're removing the worst of the worst who shouldn't be here. You can do that without all of this. And I think now, as we've stressed time and time again, this needs to end. I think that message has been sent very clearly to the administration. And I think at this point in time, I wish that they would reconsider, because of what they heard about this, or what our school superintendents have said, or what people have said. But the fact of the matter is, I don't necessarily believe that. What I do know is they are cratering in support, that they are incredibly unpopular of what they're doing to people in this moment, and that is changing their posture. And what we need in Minnesota is them to do what we've asked them to do: get out of here, do these investigations, stop this retribution campaign, but also to make sure we are simultaneously repairing the damage, working together, hearing you loud and clear, seeing what we can do through the state, seeing legislative what we can do, and then what we can do collectively as people, what we've seen on the streets who've gone out there and stood up for their neighbors. We need to take that same energy once these folks are gone and move that energy back indoors, as we said, to start spending money in Minnesota, start going out, make a conscious effort where you might not have. And I think what's so great about this city, and I say this, I get the opportunity to travel everywhere in every corner, but there's something surprising and wonderful every day. A new business, new things popping up, a new American dream that we've always fostered. Don't crush those. Do not crush those. Do not take that out. And I'm just, again, I'm going to remain hopeful at this moment, trusting but verifying. Every indication I have is that this thing is winding up on the front end. But I want to assure all Minnesotans, I want to assure the business owners, we don't see this as the end. Our work just starts now to start to clean some of this up. With that, we'll take some questions.
Governor Walz, can you share any more specifics from your conversations with Tom Homan and Susie Walz about?
Yeah, as much as I can, and I'll be as candid as I can with all of you. I'm very careful with dealing with this administration because I think if you say things and if they don't like it, I think we've seen it, the work that comes out. If the Venezuelan president hadn't danced, maybe I don't know how they think. So I'm being very careful. I'll let them make the announcements. We have been absolutely clear that they need to reduce these numbers back to the pre-surge level, which has been about 150. I have welcomed any help if they're sending experts dealing with fraud and tightening up systems. But as I said, none of those people are here and the existing ones are gone. So they've assured us that I think we are moving towards that. I have made clear that this surge staying here, there's absolutely no upside for the administration for them to be here. But what I worry about is we are on the edge of catastrophe every single day with these untrained agents out there, with the danger that's out there, with folks who want to cause disruptions. And so every day that the situation that's out on the street continues, it's a very dangerous one. So, yeah, go ahead.
Have they followed through, in your opinion, with what they've said so far?
It's hard to say. It's hard for me to verify. I think, Senator Clark, others have said this. The mood of the folks who are closest to this on the streets say no, that they're still out there. Our school superintendents say no, they're still here, they're still following us. My guess is that they have reduced the numbers, as they said. I have no reason to not believe that Mr. Homan didn't reduce the 700. But all of you picked up very quickly, that still leaves 2,300 people on the streets. And that in itself is so destructive. I have to be candid with you. I think holding the state together and the focus and everything that's happening and all the grassroots leaders that are out there, they have days to get done with this. The patience is incredibly thin. And what that means is people are adhering to peaceful, resistance to this. They're honoring their First Amendment rights, but everybody's feeling this. I mean, this is catastrophic economic damage. Look, the president said it, and I'll hold him to this. He said, this is my economy, I own it. You damn right you do. You damn right you own it in Minnesota because this is what you created. But with that being said, I think by next week, they're going to be significant where all of us can measure that. And then again, I hope that we are pivoting correctly on this to the recovery phase that is going to be ongoing. So
could you expound a little bit on follow-up? You said that you expect within days, not weeks or months.
yeah.
Can you expound on that? Because people are going to see.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. It would be my hope that Mr. Homan goes out before Friday and announces that this thing is done. And they're bringing her down, and they're bringing her down in days. That would be my expectation. Now, for all of you, the reason this is so difficult is it is very important for the President of the United States to believe he wins every golf tournament, believes he wins everything. He views this as a zero sum. I mean, to me, it strikes at the core of my soul, seeing this as a win-loss. This is a loss for everybody involved of what's happened here. With that being said, they've got to believe they accomplished what they were going to accomplish. It's my understanding they think they did, that they think they have accomplished that. Now, I don't know where the numbers are. You're doing some good research on this, but at this point in time, I think what they realize is 2,300, a tenth of the entire border control for the United States being in this city is probably not accomplishing very much more than they've already done. So it's my hope. Tom?
The House Homeland Security Committee in Washington had a hearing today and heard from the acting director of ICE. He says things have de-escalated here. They've gone back to their original mission of targeting enforcement and not roving through neighborhoods looking for people.
Did he say that in the hearing?
Yes. Have you seen evidence of that, or have you not seen a major de-escalation?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I started watching this hearing. Because look, we know the people who are there. This is fascinating because they said they did everything right. They said that we're wrong about this. We made that case that why don't you target? Why don't you do things humanely? Why do you not cause this chaos? I would argue that fits into this, that there is a change happening. Seeing it on the ground is much more difficult for me to say. I get my input, Tom, from school superintendents who say they've still not seen that change. I think one of the big things here is the psychological damage that's been done to people. People are incredibly fearful. So they may not be out there. They may not be right in that neighborhood again, but we've got no proof they're not. And the unknown is almost worse than the known.
Just a quick follow-up. Tom Homan told me last week this surge could end within 2 weeks. That was as of Friday. Do you think now it
Yes.
could actually end sooner?
My hope is that he speaks this week and that this thing is done next week. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's I've been telling. They can't keep kicking this down the road. And I think some of it's operationally here. These folks go in rotations of 30 days. I think they're coming up on a 30-day rotation. And when this group rotates out, instead of having a new group rotate in, that's where they'll end it. Your guess is as good as mine on some of this because the collaboration and coordination. Now, I will say, since Mr. Homan has been here, we talk daily, we being our administration, folks at the Bureau of Prisons, our BCA is talking. There is much more communication happening with the state and locals. And so that leads me to believe that they are probably following through. So I think for Minnesotans, we wanted them out 10 weeks ago. This has gone on way too long. The damage is far too great, but I think we're probably on the verge of that. And
Governor,
yeah.
You're not the only elected official who's been struggling to get answers from the federal government. Why do you think it's taken so long to get this actual timeline from Tom Homan? And again, you're saying days until they leave. You're saying he could make the announcement soon. Can you just confirm that is what's going to happen? And it seems like
I think it's hard. Look, you want to know my opinion on this? Depends what the mood the president is at night when they talk to him. If he's in an angry mood, I don't know. We don't talk to him after the Super Bowl halftime show. Wait till the next day. And then it's true that we are getting responses based on emotion. And the problem that we have is no one knows what the chain of command is. This is where Tom Homan, I think, did change things, that there were multiple bosses on the ground. And I made this case that whether I believe Tom Homan or not, when he said he was going to do something, my biggest concern was I did not believe those agents on the ground were listening to Tom Homan because they were following a separate chain of command. I think what's changed now is that chain of command has tightened. I think, again, there's one person making the decisions in this, and that's Stephen Miller. And he's telling them what to do. That's coming on down. Once this thing became too politically difficult for them, I think there was a change. And that's what Tom Homan's job was. So look, if you're asking me, I'm skeptical. But in this case, I'm more hopeful than I've been that they're going to wind this thing down. We're still doing all the state government things. I need them to get out of here fast so that we can pivot and do our work to the cleanup of what's going to happen. So, yeah.
It's going to take a while to get the numbers here for the economic impact, but would you just feel comfortable maybe giving some
Our bookstore is like a portal.
It's neo-Victorian, it's steampunk.
And we wanted our Wix website to be too.
It's hard to put a number on it, and I suppose our Department of Revenue will eventually have something to say on this as well. But if the city of Minneapolis, let's just take their estimate of 100 million as a given, and you multiply that by St. Paul and the surrounding suburbs, and I'm a greater Minnesota guy, I see these activities in St. Cloud, Little Falls, Worthington, and beyond. And so surely the numbers do get very high. And whatever they may be, our job then is to do the best we can with the hand we've been dealt and try to mitigate those impacts for our businesses and our workers as fast as we can and get back to growing the economy for the sake of Minnesota and for the sake of the country. I think we should all be aligned on that it is good for the country, for Minnesota to thrive, and that's what we want to get back to.
So can you answer your question?
Mr. Waddy had a specific ask here. Mr. Waddy asked if he could get a forbearance on the sales tax. Restaurants would get that. Governor, is that a possibility?
Well, I think right now we have to put everything on the table. We had this conversation. Some of us have the scars and battle scars of tip credit and different things, but these are things that the hospitality industry has brought up. I think it's appropriate now to put all of them on the table. There's things like credit card fees on sales tax and things. These are things the hospitality industry is bringing forward. Some of these predated this situation, but it's still all about, especially now that those have been exacerbated. So what I will say is that I think we have a responsibility to the business community across the state and to others to look at every single one of those proposals. What I'm able to do, if there's things I'm able to do through executive orders, through the executive branch, through deed, we're going to try and do those immediately, but they have the legislative process. The good news is we're going into session here shortly. We will have a budget forecast that comes out the end of February. I'm a little bit scared now in terms of that will be outdated, and because we base our budgeting in our legislative session based on the February forecast and the November forecast. The issue is will that be somewhat tainted by this, where we're not getting current enough numbers? But I do think, and I will make the pledge, we will look at every one of these proposals seriously to see what we can do, because some of these may be that they're things that people didn't want to do in the past, that recognize if we say don't do something around fees on the collection, we can be certain we're going to collect zero from businesses that are closed. So I think an argument is made here. If the state has to understand our revenue flows, but we have to recognize that the fallout of this, especially in the hospitality industry, could look like COVID in terms of the closures. So we have time for another one?
Commissioner,
Yeah.
could you speak a little bit more to the impacts in greater Minnesota and what you're hearing, manufacturing and beyond?
Yeah, well, it's partly anecdotal from me wanting to follow through on what we're asking others to do with Shop Local, Stand Together. And so I made plans to go out to dinner one night with Senator Eric Putnam, who represents that area as well. And he got a tip on where we should go to an immigrant-led restaurant. And I got there first and they were closed. And we don't know exactly why, but it seems reasonable to expect that this may have been why. And so then we went to the next place, which was excellent, but their numbers were way down. And so in addition, we have lots of folks reaching out to our office, to the governor's office as well, wanting to share their story. And in fact, that's how we ended up here today, because Patty reached out to the governor. And so we've been hearing heartbreaking stories, not just of dollars and cents, but of livelihoods that are interrupted. And then it even goes into, as I said, manufacturing, where I have some leaders telling me that they are worried about supply chain interruptions because at the height of all this activity, truck drivers indicated some fear about being in Minnesota without respect to their legal status, but just because of the color of their skin.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to make the push again to Minnesotans. People want to know how they're going to help. Everybody has a different way of focusing on this. Again, I speak to the Minnesotans who, the vast majority who say, yes, we need immigration reform, but it needs to be targeted. It needs to be smart. It needs to be humane. But understand what's happened here goes well beyond that. So get out and spend a little bit of money. I know it's a stressful time. It's hard to find any time to be somewhat joyful. It's hard because you know what's happening. You know the pain that people are feeling. But I do think you get both of those. If you get a chance to go out to eat and spend some money, it's good for you and it's good for the folks you're going to. And I would be remiss if I didn't. I think it's on right now. I'm going to go catch the update. The two Corys from Duluth are competing for gold in curling, and Minnesotans have every reason to be proud. I've never been prouder of this state during what's happened here. I've never been proud. Hockey's at 1. All right, so we're trying to keep track of them. So we'll let you all, we'll keep you updated on this. And like I said, I think hopefully, and Claire, you can maybe correct, I think later in the week, we're going to try and get something to come back with a package of support. So great. Thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, now I'm going to go to Tom Homan, who actually is talking about ending. I was going to end the stream, but I'm just going to go ahead and see it. Here's Homan in Minnesota.
Good morning. I'm Tom Homan, Board of Czar President Trump. I'm going to read the statement real quick. Then after I read the statement, I'll take questions. I'm here with Sam Molson, Director of ICE and Enforcement Mover Operations for the St. Paul Field Office. Stephen Schrank, Acting Special Agent in charge for ICE Homeland Security Investigations. And Chris Kuhn, Deputy Chief Patrol Agent for the United States Border Patrol. I'm very pleased to report that this surge operation and our work here with state and local officials to improve coordination and achieve mutual goals, as well as our efforts to address issues of concern here on the ground, have yielded the successful results we came here for. The Twin Cities and Minnesota in general are and will continue to be much safer for the communities here because of what we have accomplished under President Trump's leadership. I previously shared with you before I got here. Before I even got here, I met with, I said I was going to meet with the governor, the AG, and the Mayor Fry, Mayor Herr, and I've done all of that. I've also met with various police chiefs and sheriffs. And one thing we all had in common was the importance of ensuring and maintaining public safety. Overall, we made a lot of progress through extensive engagement, meeting with them and other key stakeholders. And it is expected that those engagements and discussions will continue going forward in order to enhance exchange of information and more coordination. As a result of this surge operation, we have greatly reduced the number of targets for enforcement action. And many criminal aliens have been arrested and taken off the streets, including murders, sex offenders, national security threats, gang members, and other violent criminals. Just this week, ICE arrested a criminal alien with criminal convictions for rape, acts with a child under 14 years of age with force, lewd and lascivious acts with a child under 14. ICE also arrested 2 criminal aliens with criminal sexual misconduct convictions, among other violent criminals. Through targeted enforcement operations based on reasonable suspicion and prioritizing safety and security, ICE will continue to identify, arrest, and remove illegal aliens that pose a risk to public safety, like we've done for years. And our officers will carry out those duties with professionalism, integrity, and compassion, like we've done for years. We will enforce immigration law against all persons in the United States illegally. I want to say something about the various unfounded complaints I'm hearing about ICE enforcement operations. During the surge operation, ICE has not arrested anybody inside a hospital. We have not arrested anybody inside of a school, an elementary school. We have not arrested anybody inside a church. As a matter of fact, the only ones that disrespected the sanctuary of a church were the agitators that have been arrested and prosecuted, and so far we have 9 of them. However, those locations are not off the table. I said from day one, there's no sanctuary for a significant public safety threat or national security threat. But as far as those stories about ICE going into churches, arresting people in hospitals, it simply has not happened. And if you have a case where it happened, you let me know. Because all the digging I've done here, I can't find a single one. Under President Trump's direction, we have obtained an unprecedented level of coordination with law enforcement officials that is focused on promoting public safety across the entire state. While I don't agree with Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellis on everything, I appreciate the support that Governor gives to state agencies who coordinate with us in a manner intended to promote public safety. And I appreciate the AG having an open dialogue with me. Early on, the first meeting I had, acknowledging that county jails may notify ICE of the release date of an inmate, just as long as they don't hold them past the time they would normally release them. We now have the ability to arrest criminal aliens in the safety and security of jails throughout the state at the time they're being released, like we've done in other states. I've also directed the strategic placement of officers in certain areas throughout the states that can respond quickly to sheriffs that want to release somebody and notify us. We need to be nearby so they don't hold them unnecessarily. So we worked on a strategic plan to reassign officers in those key locations. Arresting a public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail is safer for the alien, it's safer for the officer, and safer for the community. I think we all can agree on that. It requires less resources for at-large operations. It just makes sense. I'll say it again, as I've said many times, we are not asking local law enforcement to act as immigration officers. I don't want them to be immigration officers. We're the immigration officers. We just want them to be cops. We're asking law enforcement to coordinate with other law enforcement to help keep public safety risk out of the communities. We have also strengthened our existing coordination with the state to target and take custody of criminal aliens more efficiently and effectively. As a result of our efforts here, Minnesota is now less of a sanctuary state for criminals. And we are proud of the public safety threats we have removed from the criminal aliens out of the state. As I said in my first press conference a couple weeks ago, President Trump didn't send me here because operations were being run and conducted perfectly. I came here to identify issues and implement solutions to improve our mission execution. Since that time, in order to improve target enforcement operation, I and my team here, we made personnel changes. We integrated BP with the ICE teams. We established a single unified chain of command structure. We strengthened joint intelligence and targeting capabilities. We deployed body cameras. We increased the footprint of internal affairs. We commuted zero tolerance for misconduct. President Trump also deployed me here to work with state and local officials to de-escalate the intense, volatile reactions and conflicts that have unfolded on the streets here between federal law enforcement and unlawful agitators. While working to course correct and improve how enforcement operations are being run and executed here, and even before I was sent up here, I've been saying over and over that forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, or interfering with a federal law enforcement officer is a crime in violation of USC 111. It's not okay. It will not be tolerated. Zero tolerance if you cross that line and put hands on a ICE officer. Not only is such activity unlawful, it is dangerous, and sadly, we have seen tragic consequences, as well as adverse impacts on businesses and the communities here in the city. While the Trump administration supports everyone's First Amendment right to freedom of speech and assembly and to petition, it has to be done lawfully and peacefully. Because we will not tolerate unlawful actions committed by agitators who are just causing havoc. This is not the way to express your disagreement or try to reform federal laws. Go talk to your members of Congress if you want the laws changed in this country. Nor is doxing federal law enforcement personnel and their families. It's just not right. Enough is enough with this misguided, reckless, and shameful behavior. We don't want to see any more bloodshed. I don't want to see any more bloodshed. I pray every night for the safety of our law enforcement personnel and the safety of those in the community, whether you're here legally or illegally. I don't want to see anybody harmed. If you break the law, we're going to arrest you. We have already arrested more than 200 people for violations of USC 111. The U.S. Attorney's Office has already accepted many for prosecutions, and some are still pending. I have also received commitments from state and local law enforcement that they will respond if federal law enforcement is being impeded or assaulted. They will shut down unlawful agitator activity, including arresting agitators involved and seeing them follow through. And we're seeing them follow through on those commitments. We've seen this past weekend that the state and local law enforcement have taken action when it comes to public safety. And bless them for doing that. Since I have been here, I've repeatedly emphasized that the unlawful and violent agitator activity is unacceptable and must wind down as a condition for further drawdown of law enforcement personnel. I cannot remove law enforcement personnel while violence poses serious risk to our officers. I will not leave my officers in that position.
We're going to show you 13 mind-blowing use cases for creators using the new AI Workspace 2.0 from GenSpark.
It is worth knowing that in all my meetings and discussions since I got here, I've not heard one federal, state, local law enforcement, or judicial official nor any member of the business or faith communities that I met with say that ICE is an illegitimate agency that doesn't have a real mission. Quite the opposite. All I've heard is the acknowledgement that federal immigration laws passed by Congress do exist, and ICE has a legitimate responsibility to enforce those laws. ICE is a legitimate federal law enforcement agency. We're not out scouring the streets to jail people or deny people their civil rights or due process. In addition to taking public safety threats off the street, ICE here in this state have located 3,364 missing unaccompanied alien children that the last administration lost and weren't even looking for. That's because the leadership of President Trump, these children were located. As part of the de-escalation efforts, I have called on state and local officials these past few weeks to tone down the rhetoric and denounce unlawful activities being conducted by the agitators. We don't have to agree on everything, and we definitely do not. But we all agree that the lawlessness and chaos and disruption that is occurring on the street needs to end. I want to thank Governor Walz for his messages focusing on peace and his support for the Minnesota State Troopers to respond to unlawful situations that put federal officers and the public at risk. I also want to thank Mayor Fry for taking a public stance against agitators setting up barricades that block streets and endanger public safety, and for directing the police to take those roadblocks down. Additionally, I want to thank Police Chief O'Hara, Sheriff Witt, and various other local law enforcement for their responsiveness and efforts to maintain law and order in the streets. We've seen a big change here in the last couple of weeks, and it's all good changes. I'm also pleased to report that we're seeing a notable decrease on unlawful agitator activity here in Minneapolis and overall throughout the state. This is great news for Minnesota communities that have been adversely impacted by the lawlessness and chaos on the street. We have what we call here QRFs, Quick Response Force, security teams that get called out when ICE officers are out doing operations. They get into trouble if agitators get out of control. If there's a danger, public safety is at risk. These QRFs respond to help these officers get off the action and get out of that situation. I asked today when I got here, I want to know what the QRF's call outs are, what their deployments are. I want to know every time a QRF is called out. The QRF deployments have dropped dramatically because we have less of that occurring, less of the agitator that cross that line. That is a good thing. That is a win for everybody, not just for the safety of law enforcement officers. It's a win for this community. With that, and success that has been made arresting public safety threats and other priorities since this surge operation began, as well as the unprecedented levels of coordination we have obtained from state officials and local law enforcement, I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through the next week. We have a lot of work to do across this country to remove public safety risk who shouldn't even be in this country, and to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation. Law enforcement officers drawing down from this surge operation will either return to their duty stations or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that. We will continue to enforce Title VIII immigration law throughout this nation. Prioritizing national security threats and public safety risks makes sense. But I'll continue to say over and over again, if you are here in the country legally, you're not exempt from our immigration laws. If we encounter you, we'll take appropriate enforcement action. For those that say we are backing down from immigration enforcement or the promise of mass deportations, you are simply wrong. Look at the data. Record number of arrests and deportations under President Trump's first year. And we'll continue that effort. Prioritizing public safety threats and national security threats doesn't mean we forget about everybody else. We will take action on everybody else. That's just a stone cold fact. A small footprint of personnel will remain for a period of time to close out and transition full command and control back to the field office. as well as to ensure agitator activity continues to decline, and that state and local law enforcement continue to respond to ensure officer and community safety. Additionally, federal government personnel assigned to conduct criminal investigation into the agitators, as well as the personnel assigned here for the fraud investigations, will remain in place until the work is done. I will also remain on the ground for a little longer to oversee the drawdown of this operation and ensure its success. In closing, I want to thank the leadership and senior management that I've worked with for your efforts into these issues, determine deficiencies and challenges, present solutions, and implement improvements that will benefit how operations are run and executed nationwide. God bless the men and women of ICE, men and women of the Border Patrol. Appreciate everything you've done for us. Also, with sincere gratitude, President Trump and I want to thank the men and women of ICE and CBP and partner agencies who have been assigned here during Operation Metro Surge. You achieved a great success for the Minnesota communities. Thank you to your families as well, because I know they sacrifice also. Thank you, President Trump, for your vision, as well as your support and confidence in these brave, dedicated patriots that work hard to deliver on your strong commitment to law and order, public safety, prosperity for American communities. Today, we have the most secure border in American history. We are seeing record numbers of people being arrested and deported. Your promise to make America safe again is being played out every day on the streets of this country. I've said it many times. I worked for 6 different presidents, 10 different administrations. No one has done it better than President Trump. God bless this great country. I'll take questions now.
We'll take a couple questions, no follow-ups. I'll start off with Frankie.
Yeah. Mr. Homan, as immigration enforcement continues across the country here in Minnesota as well, how do you hope to gain the trust of individuals here that have kind of been wary of seeing federal officers on the street, but let's say 6 months from now, we still have the office here, we still are enforcing immigration across the country. What do you hope things to look like, and what are you asking for the public?
Look, I just want people to look at the data on what this administration has done. You know, the number of public safety threats we removed from the streets across this country, that makes these communities safer. ICE has had an office here for decades. Before it's called INS, Immigration Naturalization Service. This footprint will remain here, and they'll continue to do immigration enforcement here. But as President Trump has said from day one, we're going to prioritize the public safety threats. Again, but prioritization doesn't mean forget about everybody else. That means you have a criminal alien here and non-criminal here. The criminal always comes first because he's the biggest threat to the communities. We're going to continue to force immigration law, but we'll get back to the footprint here, the normal footprint here. But there will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators incidents either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending. And in the next week, we're going to deploy the officers here in detail back to their home stations or other areas of the country that are needed. But we're going to continue to enforce immigration law. That's what the American people voted for. But it has to be a priority of criminals. And look, I hear all the hate about, you know, you should arrest everybody. Oh, we are. But we're prioritizing those who are the biggest threat to our community. The rapists, the murderers, the child molesters. That's the right thing to do. But I'll say it again. President Trump made a promise of mass deportation, and that's what this country's going to get. But it's smart law enforcement to do target enforcement operations. Now, I've heard people attack me using the word targeted. I sat for the last 2 months when I watched this operation, daily press briefings talking about targeted Title VIII operations. Nothing changed, other than we're going to make sure they're targeted and make sure we know who we're going for, what their immigration record, what's their criminal history. That comes first. But enforcement of Title VIII is not going to end. If you're in this country legally, you're not off the table. And I think we're proving that if you look at the data.
Mr. Homan, just had a question about the final number of arrests you had and how many of those people arrested were those targeted security threats you were after?
I don't have that exact breakdown. I know we made over 4,000 arrests here. That is something the local field office can supply. I don't have the exact breakdown, but I can tell you since I've been on the ground, they've been target enforcement arrests. I believe they were target enforcement arrests before I got here. What I did is create one chain of commands where everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and there's and integrate operation command centers. There were some issues here, and we addressed those issues. But I'm not going to sit here and say anybody did anything wrong, and that they were unprofessional. I'm going to say there were some issues here. We fixed those issues. We've had great success with this operation, and we're leaving Minnesota safer. The surge is leaving Minnesota safer, Minneapolis safer, because of the cooperation we got with the counties and the state and local law enforcement responding to our needs. I'll say it again, it's less of a sanctuary state for criminals.
Yeah, sorry to go a little off topic here, but can you confirm that CPD actually hit a party balloon instead of a drone with a laser during the incident in El Paso? And why wasn't that action coordinated with the FAA?
I have no information on that. It's out of my league.
So we're going to keep the questions to Minnesota topic. Go ahead.
Mr. Homan, can you specify how many county sheriffs, local jails have agreed to work with you and honor ICE detainers?
I have not met one county jail that says no to us. They want to work with us.
Okay, we have time for one more. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mr. Homan. You talked about this unprecedented level of cooperation between local officials and yourself. Can you explain more what is changed now in terms of that cooperation from before?
Several things have changed. First of all, when the agents were out doing operations and the agitators got a hand and proposed a public safety threat, not just to the officers, but the communities, law enforcement response has been sporadic at best. I think at what you've seen now, what you saw this past weekend, is law enforcement is responding to public safety needs quickly. And people were arrested for violating city ordinances as far as when unlawful assembly and so forth. They come to assist us to make sure our officers, the person we have in custody, leave that scene safely. You've seen it this weekend, and I'm happy that the local and state was there also, that responded, and we haven't seen any incidents of them not responding since we have these agreements in place now. As far as the jails, we got more cooperation, more jails than they had before we got here. And that's a good thing. We're having conversation with the state, and state already accepted our detainees, but we're moving further on our agreements with the state. So,
hey guys, is your tire pressure light stuck on even when your tires are fine? I had the same headache until I found
the cooperation we have here is going to keep this city safer. It's going to keep our agents safer. Arresting public safety threats in a jail just makes sense. If we look at, I was talking to my chief of staff this morning on the way over here. I see that most people on the other side, I say the other side, they say that this argument with Democrats versus Republicans, whatever. But most of the people, even Democrats, are saying they want public safety threats to be the focus. They think public safety threats, illegal aliens should be addressed. But to say that and not let us into jail, you can't square that. I just noticed the governor of New York, my home state. I've heard her say that she believes public safety threat, illegal aliens should be the focus of ICE. But to have a press conference last week to lock us out of the jails and end 287G agreements, how do you square that? You can't. So again, prioritization of public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We're going to enforce the immigration law, and we're going to have a mass deportation. President Trump promised that, and we're committed to that. However, it shouldn't be a partisan issue that you arrest public safety threats in the safety and security of a jail. Releasing public safety threats back in the public is just stupid. And I've been arguing this for years. And I hope Congress takes action on sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. It makes sense. If you think about it, even the argument I hear, well, victims and witnesses of crime that are in the country illegally want to feel safe to come to law enforcement and to report those crimes without fearing that this law enforcement agency is working with ICE. That's a bunch of crap. Because victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy released in the neighborhood either. It's ridiculous. We want access to the person that you chose, the local jurisdiction chose to lock in a jail cell. And we have that cooperation here now. It's the right thing to do, and it makes this community safer. This community is safer because we arrested 4,000 illegal aliens in this, over 4,000 illegal aliens here, many of them public safety threat, not all of them. As I said, we're going to force immigration law, but this community is much safer because of President Trump's leadership and the men and women standing on the stage.
Thank you. That's all the questions we're going to take right now.
This is a big one. If you're into environment, this is about as big as it gets, they tell me. And it's an honor to be here with a terrific person who's worked so hard on this and some other terrific people. Thank you very much. But I'm pleased to be joined today by EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who you all know, and to announce the single largest deregulatory action in American history. That's a big statement in American history. And I think we can add the words by far. Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. Prices went up incredibly for a worse product. This action will eliminate over $1.3 trillion of regulatory costs and help bring car prices tumbling down dramatically. You're going to get a better car. You're going to get a car that starts easier, a car that works better for a lot less money. In 2009, Barack Hussein Obama, his EPA designated fossil fuels such as oil, gas, and other things that actually make factories rock and roll and other things drive very nicely as a threat to health and human welfare, known as the endangerment finding. This determination had no basis, in fact, had none whatsoever, and it had no basis in law. On the contrary, over the generations, fossil fuels have saved millions of lives and lifted billions of people out of poverty and all over the world. And you see it with the blackouts all over where they don't use it, where they went to wind, intermittent wind, which is weak and ineffective and very, very costly, most costly energy there is. And people are dying because there was no air conditioning or there was no heating. Lots of other things, bad things happened. And yet this radical rule became the legal foundation for the Green New Scam, one of the greatest scams in history, probably as great, maybe even greater than Russia hoax, etc., which the Obama and Biden administration used to destroy countless jobs. And the jobs have been just decimated. Although they're all coming back because of tariffs, they're all coming back into our country at levels we've never seen before. But it raised prices and caused immense harm to the U.S. auto industry. We thought irreparable, but we've got them back. We're coming back now. I was in Detroit, as you know, with Ford, and they had one of the earliest plants from the early 1900s, and it was going to be closed down. And then when I won, they said, let's keep it open for a little while. Let's see what happens. And they just announced, as you know, they're going 24 hours around the clock with that same plant that was going to be closed because of what we've done. For example, under the endangerment finding, they forced the hated start-stop feature onto American consumers, which unnecessarily shuts off a car's engine when you stop at a red light. In other words, the engine goes off. That's great. The endangerment finding was also used to impose the massive and really very expensive electric vehicle mandate, expensive in the sense that nobody wanted it. Everybody was going to be forced to buy an electric car in a very short period of time, even though you can't power the car because we would have had to spend $5 trillion on power stations. That's all dead, gone, over. These crippling restrictions were a major factor in driving up car prices to unprecedented levels, and the car that you were getting was not nearly as good. In 4 years under the Biden administration, the price of a new and used car rose more than 22%, all to facilitate the Green New Scam without achieving any meaningful impact on the environment, but making the car worse. That is why, effective immediately, we are repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. This action will save American consumers trillions of dollars and will lower the average cost of a new vehicle by close to $3,000. Think of that. During my campaign, I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new regulation. And we've exceeded that. We've instead done it 10 regulations. We were able to cut 129. So now we cut 129. So think of that. I promised to cut 10 old regulations for every new one, but we did more than 10. We did 129. It's something, nobody can even believe it. So we did a lot of regulation cutting in the first administration, a record, nobody even close to it now. We're actually exceeding it in this administration. The biggest one yet that we've done is happening right now. So perhaps no industry has benefited more from our historic deregulation campaign than the U.S. auto industry. We canceled the EPA's absurd, just totally absurd tailpipe emission standards, which was a disaster for automobile manufacturing, and revoked Biden's emissions waiver that would have allowed California to regulate automobiles for the entire nation. And they're crazy out in California. They have nothing but trouble out there, as you know. That's why people are leaving in record numbers. I also ended Joe Biden's extreme CAFE emission standards, saving the average American consumer much more than $1,000 when they buy a new car. But now we're talking about close to $3,000. These regulation cuts, combined with our tax cuts and tariffs, are the reason why the world's largest automakers have announced that they're going to be spending in excess of $100 billion in the United States in the next very short period of time, building new auto plants. We're bringing our auto plants, assembly plants, and factories roaring back to life, not even mentioning AI and all of the other things. We're building thousands of businesses in the United States. And if you remember, on my first day, they said if I could ever get the Dow up to 50,000 in my last year, in other words, in the fourth year, that it would be an unbelievable miracle. But don't worry about it, because it'll never happen, they said. And if I could get the S&P up to 7,000, they said in the fourth year, they said it will never happen. Let's not even talk about it. I have things, let's not even waste our time talking about it. Well, at the very end of my first year, the Dow hit 50,000. Now it's over 50,000. And 3 days before that, the S&P hit 7,000. So we didn't have to wait till the end of the fourth year. We just waited till the end of the first year. We've never had a country in a position like this, and a lot of it's due to tariffs, and a lot of it's due to the fact that we had a great election, and a lot of good things have been done. One of the good things I did was put Lee Zeldin in charge of our environment. So I'm going to ask Lee to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a big deal. Under President Trump's leadership today, the Trump EPA has finalized the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America. Referred to by some as the holy grail of federal regulatory overreach, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding is now eliminated. This action will save American taxpayers over $1.3 trillion. What that means is lower prices, more choices, and an end of heavy-handed climate policies. With today's announcement, American families will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. 16 years ago, an ideological crusade within the Obama administration set off the most costly regulatory power grab our country has ever experienced. The 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding led to trillions of dollars in regulations that strangled entire sectors of the United States economy, including the American auto industry. It claimed new powers over the vehicles we drive, even though the best reading of the Clean Air Act clearly states otherwise. The Obama and Biden administrations used it to steamroll into existence a left-wing wish list of costly climate policies, electric vehicle mandates, and other requirements that assaulted consumer choice and affordability. And who paid the biggest price? Hardworking families, small businesses, millions of Americans who just want a reliable, affordable car to get to work, take their kids to school, or go to church on Sunday. The endangerment finding and the regulations that were based on it didn't just regulate emissions. It regulated and targeted the American dream. And now the endangerment finding is hereby eliminated, as well as all greenhouse gas emission standards that followed. The red tape has been cut. Manufacturers will no longer be burdened by measuring, compiling, or reporting greenhouse gas emissions for vehicles and engines. And the forced transition to electric vehicles is eliminated. No longer will automakers be pressured to shift their fleets towards electric vehicles, vehicles that are still sitting unsold on dealer lots all across America. And as a cherry on top, we are ending the federal government's push to get manufacturers to install that Obama switch, the almost universally despised start-stop feature. There will be no more climate participation trophies awarded to manufacturers for making Americans' cars die at every red light and stop sign. It's over, done, finished. Under President Trump's leadership, vehicle manufacturers can once again build what Americans want, not what politicians and bureaucrats in Washington demand. President Trump campaigned on reviving the auto industry, and he continues to deliver win after win after win, ending electric vehicle mandates, getting rid of the Biden CAFE standards with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, and securing massive new U.S. manufacturing investments and all of the jobs that come with it. Affordable cars mean opportunity. That means jobs, healthcare, education, and mobility, especially for working families and rural Americans who rely on their vehicles every single day. And this isn't just about making the American economy boom. It's also about restoring the rule of law, a fundamental principle of our great republic. For years, unelected bureaucrats twisted the Clean Air Act into something it was never meant to be. The Obama administration twisted itself into some kind of mental pretzel to invoke authority it didn't have and to sidestep Congress. They claimed that 6 greenhouse gas emissions contribute some amount above zero to global climate change, what they said endangered public health. But their wild web of mental leaps isn't prescribed in federal statute. The Obama EPA's House of Cards upended the best reading of the Clean Air Act, as well as 50 years of EPA precedent on what constitutes regulable air pollution. In the 16 years that intervened, the Supreme Court has established clear precedent in Loper Bright Enterprises and West Virginia versus EPA. And in light of these Supreme Court decisions and other developments, upon his swearing in last year, President Trump immediately tasked on day one, submitting requirements, recommendations, research on the legality and continued applicability of the 2009 endangerment finding. And at Trump's speed, he wanted that research and recommendation turned around instantly. We looked at the Clean Air Act. We looked at what the highest court in the land had said, and we used a very simple metric. If Congress didn't authorize it, EPA shouldn't be doing it. Congress never voted for these climate mandates inside of Section 202 of the Clean Air Act. If Congress wants EPA to regulate the heck out of greenhouse gases emitted from motor vehicles, then Congress can clearly make that the law, which they haven't done for good reason. Today, we dismantle the tactics and legal gymnastics used by the Obama and Biden administrations to backdoor their ideological agendas on the American people. Following the plain language of the law, we have now realigned EPA's rulemaking to reflect the Clean Air Act exactly as it is written and as Congress intended, not as others might wish it to be. Where our predecessors focused on trying to make and please a few fear-mongering climate alarmists, the Trump EPA is making decisions to benefit all Americans based on common sense and reality. And the American people are tired of paying the price of political games. Last November, they voted for an administration that would listen to them. They told us that the price of a newer, safer vehicle was too high. They told us they didn't want cars that shut off at every red light. They told us dealers were sitting on lots filled with electric vehicles that nobody wanted or were buying. The Trump EPA listened. We heard you and we acted. And today's action does not change regulations on traditional air pollutants and air toxics. This EPA is committed to providing clean air for all Americans. Powering the great American comeback is based on the singular focus of providing clean air, land, and water for all Americans while harnessing the greatness of the American economy. That's a big difference from our predecessor. We believe that we can and must choose both. If you want an electric vehicle, buy one. If you want a diesel truck, then buy that. If you want a gas-powered vehicle or a hybrid, well, more power to you. That's what freedom and choice look like. We're restoring the rule of law, we're grounding policy in reality, we're giving power back to the American people. And we're bringing back the American dream stronger than ever before. EPA will never waver on its core mission of protecting human health and the environment, and this administration knows we can do that while ushering in the golden age of America. To recap, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding and all greenhouse gas emission standards on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles that followed is eliminated. American families now will save over $2,400 for a new vehicle. Today, the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States, over $1.3 trillion, the elimination of the endangerment finding is signed, sealed, and delivered.
Thank you, Lee. That was long, but good. It was good. Maybe I should say great. It was great, and we appreciate it. Would you have anything to say, Russ? Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Literally no other president would have done this to get at the foundations of the Green New Deal. So tremendously excited that we are where we are today. Great work by Lee. I'm a little worried that this next year will be EPA alone will be dereg east by the number of things that are going to come out of EPA. So great work to the team. $1.3 trillion in savings, massive historical opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Please. Would you like to speak? You're worthy of it. Good man.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is a historic day led by President Trump's leadership. No other president, as Russ said, would have undertaken this and at the speed we did. It was a great team effort. This is the model of the Trump administration, everyone working together, mission aligned.
And Lee is also working on cleaning up the horrible situation with regard to farm equipment. You could use John Deere as an example and other companies where tractors are unbelievably expensive and don't work as well because of all of the environmental nonsense that was put on them. Also excavators, any equipment like that, bulldozers, Caterpillar tractor would be a beneficiary, I guess, but the people are going to be a beneficiary because the equipment's going to be a lot less expensive, and it's going to also most importantly. It's going to work much better, much better. So we're working on that immediately as we speak. And we'll probably make it so that any of that equipment built in the United States will not have to go through this. If it's built outside, I think we'll probably leave the standard the same. If people are going to send us equipment, let them have that standard for whatever it's worth, which is not much. And I think that's a very big announcement too. And we're going to see if we can get that done very quickly so that all of that equipment that we have made, including lawnmowers, et cetera, you won't have to go to the finest schools in the world in order to figure out how to operate it. Okay? So any questions, please?
President Trump, thank you for this. And after this much supported move to roll back the former EPA's endangerment finding, what additional steps do you plan on taking to scale back what many are calling climate industry scams? Specifically, and Secretary Zeldin knows about these wind turbines they're trying to bring to New York. Judges allowing them to be rebuilt right near your hometown in Jamaica, Queens. They're being called a national security threat for air traffic coming into the airport. What could you do to make sure these things
Well,
don't
we're trying to
destroy the
make sure it
environment?
doesn't happen, and we've basically stopped all windmills in this country. It's the most expensive energy you can get. They're all made in China, a little bit in Germany, but mostly in China. And we're putting them all over our fields and ruining the fields and killing the birds and all of this. And the environmentalists say they like them, but they really are a tremendous eyesore. They ruined. Europe has gone, as you know, it's gone to it. Europe isn't even recognizable anymore between immigration and because of, you know, environmental things like the windmills, which are taking over. The people hate them. The energy is by far the most expensive. And we're fighting very hard to make sure that they don't get built. I hope we don't have one built during my administration. We inherited some contracts where they've gone down the line a little bit. We're trying to terminate them for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons, as you had mentioned, it's endangerment for the military. It's also endangerment for airliners. So we're trying to take care of those situations now. They should have never been allowed in the first place. Yeah,
Mr.
please.
President, thank you so much for taking
Sure.
questions. What do you tell Americans who are concerned that the $1.3 trillion in savings does come at a cost to public health and the environment based on
Yeah.
science?
I tell them, don't worry about it because it has nothing to do with public health. This was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. And let's say Obama started it and got it rolling. And a terrible ripoff. They'll have more money to spend for healthcare. If you look at it, now they can go out and spend it on something that's meaningful. And nobody's doing more for healthcare than the Republican Party. And that starts with the fact that prescription drugs are going to be coming down at numbers that nobody's ever seen before. They're falling. You know, we were paying the highest prices in the world by far, sometimes by 10 times more than other countries. Now we're going to be paying whatever the lowest price is anywhere in the world. We're going to be paying that. It's called favored nations, most favored nations. And I think it's the biggest thing to happen in this world, the world of medicine, prescription drugs ever. There's never been anything like it. You know, if like in my third year, first term, I actually got prices down 1/4 or 1/8%. And I was so proud of myself because they were like that for years and years. And since under Biden, they went up very, very substantially. And now they're coming down by, depending on, you could say 500, 600, 700%, depending on the way you want to, or you could say 80%. It doesn't matter. They're coming down by numbers that nobody ever thought possible. I got it all done and I got it all approved. And all of the countries all over the world are going to pay more. They've agreed to pay more because of tariffs. I said, if you don't do it, we're going to have to tariff you. And they've all agreed to do it. Otherwise, they would have never done it. That was why no president has ever been able to get it done. Please.
Mr. President, you took more than 600 deregulatory actions in your first year here. Coming from the business world, you know how unnecessary red tape can hinder business expansion, investment expansion. Given the magnitude of this announcement here today and the deregulatory action you took in your first year, how much economic growth can we expect to see as your term progresses?
It's a great question. I think that it'll be enormous. Who knows really what the number is, but I can tell you in terms of economic growth, we have $18 trillion being invested in this country right now, the most ever of any country by far, not even close. Think of it, no matter where, not just here. $18 trillion is coming in, and that money is being spent right now as we speak in new plants and equipments. And you may have heard Lee mention, I mentioned also, that over $100 billion is going to be spent in this very short period of time just by foreign auto companies on building auto plants in the United States. Some of the greatest thing that ever happened to the United Auto Workers. You know, the head man was not been nice to me, but now I understand he's saying this is the greatest auto president in history. But the auto workers gave me their vote, and they knew what I was doing, and they know what needed to be done. The tariffs saved them, but this is now taken it to a level that I think, Lee, that nobody ever thought even possible. They thought this was, nobody would have the courage to do it. We have to have the courage to do it because we're making America great again. This is a big factor in making our country great. If you look at some of these cars, they didn't even work. They had computers all over the place trying to save a half an ounce of fuel. We have fuel for the next 500 to 1,000 years under our feet, and they're trying like hell to save a half an ounce of fuel. The whole thing is just crazy. Please, go ahead, please.
Mr. President, is climate cooperation with China no longer in America's interest? And could you please confirm that you are going to visit China the first week of April?
Yeah, I'll be visiting President Xi in April. Look forward to it. He's coming here later in the year, and I look very much forward to it. No, our relationship with China is very good right now, and this is, not relevant too much having to do with China, what we're announcing today. But no, my relationship with President Xi is very good. Yes.
President, following your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, has your thinking changed at all as it relates to these negotiations with Iran?
No, we have
or
to
the
make a deal.
timeline with Iran?
We have to make a deal. Otherwise, it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands. But it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly. Yeah.
We might be heading into a partial government shutdown. When was the last time you spoke with Chuck Schumer? And do you still feel Democrats are negotiating in good faith?
Well, a week ago I spoke, but we have to protect our law enforcement. Actually, the Supreme Court gave a ruling, or one of the courts gave a very big ruling on masks, that you have the right to use them, for personal protection if you want. So I don't know how that interjects. They want our law enforcement to be totally vulnerable and put them in a lot of danger. They have some things that are really very, very hard to approve, frankly. As you know, it's only pretend. We had various of the other bills, that's all done, but we're left with this one. We have to protect our law enforcement, very important. Please.
Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu want you to stop negotiating with Iran?
You're saying stop entertaining, stop talking to them? Didn't say that, we didn't discuss that. I'll talk to them as long as I like, and we'll see if we can get a deal with them. And if we can't, we'll have to go to phase 2. Phase 2 will be very tough for them. I'm not looking for that.
Mr. President, there are currently 0 Israeli hostages left in Gaza because of you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And now that the war is ending in Gaza and Israel, I wanted to ask, do you believe Bibi bears any responsibility for the security failures that we saw on October 7th?
Well, October 7th was a rough time, and I guess everybody's responsible. What's you to look, but it was a terrible attack. It was a sneak attack. It was as violent as unfortunately, I've seen some of the results at levels that probably even you, good reporter, but probably you haven't seen. It was a horrible thing that took place. People were surprised. It was a surprise attack. Nobody saw that coming. He didn't see it coming. Nobody else would have seen it coming if they were in his position, I don't believe. But I can tell you he's been a very good wartime prime minister. He's been very strong. We've worked with him very well. We had tremendous success with Iran and everything else we've done. And he really has been. He's been, extraordinary as far as a wartime prime minister. Not easy. And, you have a president that refuses to give him a pardon. I think that man should be ashamed of himself. A pardon over this trial that's going on. The president of Israel, the primary power he's got is the power to give pardons. And he's not he said he's given it 5 different times, but he doesn't want to do it because I guess he loses his power. I think the people of Israel should really shame him. He's disgraceful for not giving it. He should give it. But Bibi's been a great wartime prime minister, and I've been the best friend to Israel I think that they've ever had. A lot of people say beyond presidents that they've ever had, and we will continue to be. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, voter ID polls very well nationally. Even the majority of Democrat voters want it.
Right.
So why do you think Senate Democrats are resisting the SAVE Act? And what is your strategy and realistic pathway to getting the SAVE Act passed to ensure free and fair elections for the next generation?
It's such a great question. I appreciate it, actually, because it's called the Save America Act. We've changed the name. It's the Save America Act, and the Democrats are against it. I heard one of them saying, we will stop the Save America Act. No, we're trying to save America. And it has to do with largely voting. And basically, it's got 3 very simple points. It's got voter ID, photo ID, but voter ID with a photo, right? It's got the confirmation of U.S. citizenship. You have to be a citizen. So you have a vote, you have an ID. That's about a 99% one. And I think 90% with Democrats. Then you have confirmation U.S. citizenship. That's about a 99% one with Republicans, about 86% with Democrats, except Democrat politicians because they cheat on elections. And then you have no mail-in ballots. And it would be no mail-in ballots, very important. We're the only country in the world that does a system like we do. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in ballots. The way we do this is unbelievable. It guarantees cheating. So it's no mail-in ballots with the exception of disability, illness, military, or if you're traveling, you can get an exemption. If you happen to be out of the country for a good reason, you can have an exemption. So with exceptions, it's no mail-in ballots. And that will assure the security of our crooked elections. We have crooked elections. Yeah.
Mr. President, have you fired or disciplined that staffer who posted the video from your account that included the Obamas?
No, I haven't. That was a video on, as you know, voter fraud. And fairly long video, and they had a little piece that had to do with the Lion King. It's been very well, it's been shown all over the place long before that was posted. But that was a very strong, and I'm sure you saw it, a very strong piece on voter fraud. And the piece that you're talking about was all over the place many times, I believe for years. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, were you aware that Secretary of Commerce visited Epstein's Island, and do you continue to have?
No, I wasn't aware of it. No, I didn't. I actually haven't spoken to him about it. I wasn't. But from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children. And I guess in some cases, some people were. I wasn't. I was never there. Somebody will someday say that. I was never there. Yeah, please.
This announcement that you made today, Mr. President, comes on the heels of a January jobs report that smashed industry expectations.
Smashed all records.
In the big feature of that was you reprivatizing the economy, an economy that was bloated with federal employment under the previous president. What's your message to Americans following this jobs report that smashed industry expectations? Is this just a sign that the best is yet to come?
Thank you. The jobs report's amazing in certain ways because we have tremendously fewer federal employees, way down. And now I could have left them and added to what we did, and we would have had almost 100% employment. I could have gotten a great kick out of the fact that we're 100% employed, but we got rid of tremendous numbers of federal workers, and they hated me for it. Now they love me because most of them have gotten jobs in the private sector for 2 and 3 times more money than they were being paid by the federal government. We had some jobs where you had 10 workers for one job, 10 workers for a job that one person should be doing. And we've gotten rid of a lot of those jobs. And by getting rid of them, these people became available to work in the private sector. And as you know, the numbers are incredible. So the job numbers are incredible. The financial numbers are beyond belief. Again, they thought it couldn't be done in 4 years, and I did it in 1 year. And the numbers you're going to see is these, I don't know if you notice also construction numbers, the jobs for construction workers. You know why? Because they're building plants all over the United States. That's why. And when these plants open in a year from now, some sooner, some a little bit later, But when these auto plants, AI plants, and thousands of other types of plants, when they open over the next period of a year, year and a half, you're going to see numbers like we've never seen before in this country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Let's go.
Regulations that strangled entire.
You know how unnecessary.
President.
Okay, should I use that as my screensaver, or should I use Kristi Noem standing with all those drugs behind her? Anybody in the chat still there? Which one should I use? Trump or Kristi Noem with all those drugs behind her at the very beginning? Somebody help me out, hurry up, help me out, help me out, help me out. No, 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 no. All right, well then I'm gonna go ahead and go with this one, I guess. Just cause no. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with the Kristi one because I got a thing for that one. Where is it? Kristi, where you at, girl? Right. Oh, I erased it. Damn it. Damn it. All right, then I'm using Trump. Is what it is. All right, guys. I'm up out of here. See if I got a banner for this. I don't want to. Oh, yeah, I do. All right, bet. Hope everybody has a blessed day. Billy, thanks for coming through. Ryan, thanks for your help, brother. I see you there. Hi, Enola. Hey, he's not perfect, but hey, he's still our president, bro. Deborah, much love. Everybody else that stuck around, thanks for sticking around. Have a beautiful day and night. God bless. I am out. See you all later.